So I'm re-recording this intro after filming most of the clips for this video, just to say that it is completely unscripted and it's very long, and if you're not interested in watching all of it, you may just want to go ahead and put it on 1.5 times speed. I think would be reasonable, because you can see this is, I believe, the longest video I've made, and not all of it is very deep content, so just a heads up. But anyway, this is my devlog #1 for the game that I'm making for the Brackeys Jam 2022 spring session, I guess. And I'm not going to make one of these every day, but I hope to make at least a couple of these devlogs during the jam, just to at least show you what's going on. And if this is your first time doing the jam or something like that, it may also give you a little jumping off point for if you're just absolutely confused on what to do when making a game. I think this should be pretty helpful for people like that. But as I said, you can go ahead and put it on multiple times speed. I will not be offended, and enjoy the video. So my jam process actually started right when I woke up. I got out my iPad and I checked the theme, and the theme was "It is not real." So the first thing I did was go ahead and go into OneNote and start making some themes or some ideas for the theme. And you can see the first thing I thought of was an NFT type game, because, you know, NFTs pretty much aren't actually real. And so this isn't the document I first used, it was this one, and you can see it's pretty short, but it was actually pretty useful. So I wrote out NFT artist, described a little bit of the gameplay. I also had a few other ideas, like a cryptid game where there would be some sort of Bigfoot, or I don't think Mothra is actually a real cryptid, but you know, close enough. Some sort of horror Metroidvania where there's some cryptid wandering around the map, and you would try to trap it and catch it. And then the last two ideas aren't as good. You know, imaginary numbers, you can't really make a game about that. And then imaginary friends. I mean, that could turn into a pretty good idea. So then my next part of the process was doing some visual brainstorming. I drew out some ideas, and I started with the NFT game, since that was kind of my favorite idea at the time. So here's our NFT artist next to his little laptop, the easel. And then this would be a menu where you could draw your different NFTs, and there will be a shop where you can buy new colors and brushes once you sell them. This would be the menu for that shop where you would buy. A big part of the game would be creating machines that could make your NFTs for you, and they would draw each individual stroke or a circle or something like that, and using that you would create an entire image. This would be a theoretical chain of machines you could have. So starting from this laptop, it would create the image. This would set the background. This would draw some sort of circle, like a head of a creature. This would split up into two random paths to create some variety, kind of like those NFTs you see all the time that are just obviously created by computers. And these two would draw different strokes, and this would draw one more stroke. This would be some sort of buffer for the player to choose whether they like the NFT and wanted to publish it or not. And this would be the phone where you would publish it on Twitter or whatever. This was my second idea about chasing some sort of cryptid through a Metroidvania world. And you would have to set traps, and eventually there would be different phases where the cryptid starts chasing you, and you have to lure it into some of these traps. And you can see there is escaping up a tree. You would collect different upgrades to eventually be able to climb trees and whatnot. And finally, this is the player in some sort of fail state where you accidentally fell into one of your own traps. And finally, this would be one of the last things you see in the game. You find the den of the cryptid and you can finally catch it, but it turns out it was just some raccoons the whole time, spoiler alert. And the last idea was this imaginary friends thing, where it would just be a normal action platformer where you would maybe dismember some sort of enemies, and they would become your friends, imaginary friends, and they would lend you some abilities to use, sort of like Kirby. That was the main inspiration. So out of those three ideas, I decided I could get the most gameplay depth with the least time out of the NFT artist one. And I also wanted to experiment with like generating these textures right here, because I think that'd be an interesting thing to do inside the code. So the next thing I did was compose the music for the game, and this is actually a little unorthodox for me. Music is normally one of the last things I do, but for this game I decided maybe I would come up with sort of the vibe of the game ahead of time by composing this music. So I'll play a little snippet here, and you can get the general idea of it. So the next thing I did was hop into GIMP and turn that little prototype character I made in OneNote and fleshed him out into a full character sprite art. And this is actually separated into different components to make it easier to animate. You've got the face and the body and whatnot. But an interesting thing is the character didn't always have these colors. I changed it to these colors because they are part of a certain color palette, and with my last game, Stabilizer, which I never actually ended up making a video about, but it wasn't the best. Anyway, my last game, Stabilizer, was the first game where I tried to use a specific color palette, and I generated it off of one of those color palette websites, and the game actually looked really good. It's one of my best looking games. So I decided to do the same thing for this game right here, just generate a color palette based on one of those websites, and that worked pretty well here. So the last thing I did today was go ahead and go into Unity and actually animate this character up. I started with an idle animation, just nice and simple, and I mean you can barely see it, it's very subtle, but it is just a little breathing animation just to give things a little bit more motion even when nothing's going on, which I think is always important. You want the game to be the focus of your player's attention instead of just, I don't know, the wall. Anyway, after this idle animation, and you can see it's very useful that I split these parts of the body up into separate layers, because now I can animate them separately. I also made a walk cycle here, which is a little bit clunky, but this character is not the most dexterous, even though he does make NFTs. You know, he probably draws with a mouse or something. He's got a big old neck beard. But anyway, that is all of the work that I've done for today. And hopefully within the next few days I'll have done some more work. Hopefully at least coded the character movement and whatnot, so I can show that to you. And have a good day. And one more thing I forgot to mention is that I'm actually making this game open source. I've actually already uploaded it to GitHub, so you can see my changes even before I post these devlogs. It's right on my account under Mondobi, same name as the channel, and it's called NFT Wars, so check it out if you're interested, I guess.